Thank you for joining me on stage. I'll go through some brief introductions for the panelists before you. To my immediate left is Cedric Balty, who is the Director of Innovation and the Chief Sustainability Officer at Thales Alenia. In 2021, Cedric was nominated as Chief Sustainability Officer at Thales Alenia. In 2023, he launched the Thales Alenia Space Business Catalyst, the first space industrial incubator and accelerator. Thank you for being here, Cedric. To his left is Masayasu Ishida, the Program Director of Japan's Space Strategy Fund, is the co-founder, president, and CEO of SPACETIDE, a Tokyo-based nonprofit dedicated to promoting commercial space activities and orchestrating an ecosystem for the APAC space industry. Through SPACETIDE, he leads various activities, including organizing a commercial space conference that gathers leaders from 35 countries and 25 industries. Masa, thank you for joining us this afternoon. To his left is Fani Kallianou de Jong, who is the Space Economy Lead at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is an international financial institution dedicated to supporting private sector industries in its operational regions. Over the past 2 decades, Fani has held various roles at the EBRD, primarily within the Climate Strategy and Delivery Department, and she recently became the Space Economy Lead in the bank's Digital Hub. Thank you for joining us. To her left is Professor Laurence Monnoyer-Smith, who is the head of sustainable development at CNES, at the French Space Agency, and in charge of corporate social responsibility policies with positions in the French administration in the field of sustainable development and digital transformation. Thank you also for joining us, Professor. And finally, way down at the end, is Mr. Nick Shave, who is the UK Managing Director of Astroscale. Nick joined Astroscale in June 2022 to lead the development of the Astroscale business in the UK and in Europe, in particular the active debris removal, remediation, and proximity operations, and in end-of-life servicing. So Nick, thank you also for joining us this afternoon. So yesterday, to tie this panel to yesterday, we looked at what technologies and what business models are not just a want, but absolutely necessary if we want to move space sustainability forward. Today, we're going to follow that discussion by exploring how to actually make that happen. What policies, what partnerships, in addition, what research and investments will support the development of technologies necessary for space sustainability. And how do we ensure that these necessary technologies move past the beginning stages of development and survive long enough, not just to make it to market, but to thrive at market? I'd like to remind our audience, as you know, questions can be submitted via the Q&A feature on the Whova app. Go in there, type in your features, other people will vote on them. But first is questions from myself. I'm going to start with Fani. So, Fani, as a high-level question, high-level orientation question, under your leadership, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development recently started exploring a new area on the space economy. We'd like to know what motivated this, what connection does the bank see between space sustainability, and its broader objectives, and how are those priorities, in fact, being identified? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Christopher, and thank you very much for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be in such an amazing panel. And someone asked me earlier, what are you doing here? Because I'm a banker. Well, I'm not an actual banker, but I work for a bank. And it's true, if you go around and I speak to people for the last 2 days, I don't see any other financial institution around or bank. But if you are here, please raise your hand and come and talk to me later. I think your question is, for me, I'll take it a bit more globally of why space economy matters, and I think Candice made a great presentation about the numbers today of how it impacts the logistical side. But if you look at space economy right now, it's embedded in most of the industries or sectors where actually EBRD invests in. So obviously we should be looking at it, and we haven't been looking at it proactively until now. As you said, I've been in the bank for a long time. I had different positions, mainly in the climate strategy team, so sustainability and climate action are pretty much in the core of what I do. But space became something I saw emerging as one of the solutions, one of the sectors that would allow us to reach, sustainability goals or, UN SDGs as well. So it was, what motivated it, I think, for me, it was easy to start telling my colleagues in each sector, in each banking sector, the agriculture, the infrastructure team, everyone, you already do space. You just don't realize it is space because they don't call it space. They could call it, we have a venture capital team that supports technology innovators. I'm like, yes, a lot of them are, into the space ecosystem. Or we support, actually, I realized, do you know what EBRD is? Or can I ask you in the audience, can you raise your hand if you ever heard of EBRD before?
A few. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. Okay, so back to basics, yes. Sorry, I should say, as Christopher said, we're an international financial institution. We start with the word European. Forget about that. We are owned by 75 shareholders, like countries, including US, Japan. So it's not European, so it can be misleading. People often think that I'm EIB. We are brothers and sisters. We like EIB. We are the same family of multilateral development banks, but we are a different beast. And what makes us different, actually, from the other multilateral development banks is that our core mission and the reason why we exist is to empower the private sector industry in all the region where we operate. And actually, maybe I should say that as well, the region where we operate used to be the former USSR because we were basically born out of the, fall of the Berlin Wall, and then we were supposed to transition these economies into market economies. But that mission has evolved into adding more countries, Mongolia, Turkey, Northern Africa, and I'm very excited now we're going sub-Saharan Africa. So as you can see, the region is not European per se, but of course the Commission and EIB is also an entity. Okay, parenthesis over, now you know what EBRD stands for. And space economy being part of all these industries now, and I think it's relevant also for us to look at space and economy in two ways. One, we are a bank. We can invest in these space ecosystem in big projects, small projects. It can be startups. It can be big infrastructure project. We have a banking team called Telecommunication, Media and Technology Banking Team. And in their book, in their Bible, basically, or Quran, sorry, I don't want to, expect any religion from you, but in their guidebook, it says they can invest in satellites. But when I said we can do space, they were like, no, we can't. And I said, this is space. It's just a matter of also educating ourselves that space nowadays is part of many industries. And I think that's one of the role, and I think one of the key aspects I will have to accomplish within my new role. So I've been in the bank for 20 years, but I've been the space person only for 3 months now, so excuse my ignorance on some of the amazing abbreviation in the space world. But I realized the opportunities for us to invest in the space ecosystem are huge. Precision farming. I mean, we do a lot of, agriculture investments in so many countries where we operate. We do infrastructure, transport. I'm speaking too much, I'll stop right now. But I just want to say it's amazing that we can now, and the strategy and priorities for us to see where are the opportunities for us to invest, right? But also how we as an institution can leverage and use space, maybe application or data to make us a better bank within our functions. We can use geospatial data for risk assessment, for monitoring of our own investments, or assess the impact of our project after investment has happened, basically before, during, and after. So we can also be a client of the space economy domain. I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it was a high-level question. You needed to go over it quite broadly. I have another high-level question, but we're going to turn to Masa. Masa, can you please introduce the objectives of Japan's Space Strategy Fund, and what are the areas of space technology it is focusing on? How did Japan decide, in fact, to start this initiative?
Okay, thank you, Secure World Foundation, for having me. So it's my pleasure to be here. And I have a question to the audience. So have you had a Space Strategy Fund in Japan? Very few. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to introduce our initiative. So I'm directing our Japanese government space strategy fund. This is a vital policy initiative aimed at supporting private sector technology development with $7 billion over the next decade. So Japan has been implementing a variety of commercial space policy over the past decade, such as 3 Space-Related Act, various technology demonstration program, and also our space business idea contest. So as a result, Japanese space industry has grown with over 100 space startups and also over 100 large corporations from various terrestrial industries investing in the space industry. So however, funding for technology development and business development has not enough through the conventional policy or private investment. So in this context, our Japanese government launched the Space Strategy Fund last year. So we have already secured $4 billion to support 46 technology development topics. And we will be providing funding through grant or subsidies to private companies, universities, and also research institutions for their technology development. So our primary focus is technology development support. However, the objective of the Space Strategy Fund is not just to develop technologies, but also to expand the market, address national and global agendas, and also strengthen the industrial foundations. So there are, especially for market expansion, the Space Strategy Fund is expected to contribute to a national goal of doubling the size of the domestic market by early 2030s. So there are, as such, business perspectives are very important, taken into account throughout the entire process of the fund. So from the application and selection, and to stage gate evaluation and final outcome. So to fulfill this role, the steering board of the fund, I'm serving as a chairperson, and also a selection committee consists of a mix of business and technology professional. So in addition, our basic policy of the Space Strategy Fund highlights our government procurement, government role as an anchor tenant for the technology supported by the Space Strategy Fund. On top of that, we have just published new framework to accelerate the international collaboration under the Space Strategy Fund. So the Space Strategy Fund is expected to serve as a cornerstone for building a sustainable ecosystem from the technology development, demonstration, initial demand creation, and also business expansion. Yeah, that's the overview of the Space Strategy Fund.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'd now like to turn to industry. Nick, what's your assessment of whether we are currently on the critical path to ensuring that these key technologies, like those that Astroscale and others are developing, will actually come to fruition?
Thanks, Chris. And from Astroscale, we're very pleased to be supporting this great conference. So I'm really looking forward to Brazil next year. It's a great announcement today. I know we're talking about valleys here, but I'd like to shift the analogy slightly, if I may, and talk about mountains. I see at the end of the path, at the top of the mountain, the circular space economy. It's our corporate objective to make the circular space economy a reality by 2035. So we have 10 years we have to get there. We're building some of the fundamental technologies at the moment to enable that. And I'm going to raise 3 of them here to answer your question, Chris. So rendezvous proximity operations, or RPO, is really the key. That's the differentiator for the sort of spacecraft we're building. We're building 9 different spacecraft across all of our entities here in France, in Japan, in the UK, as well as in the US, across a myriad of different services, ranging from active debris removal to refueling, to we're looking at refurbishment as well in early stage, and life extension generally as well. Inspection's another one around what we, in our SSA business line. That's to go and really research how we can remove debris or can provide services to the in-orbit economy. So RPO is fundamental. A good example of that is ADRAS-J, the mission we launched last year, That was a world first. We got to within 20 meters of a 3.5-ton rocket body. We're now building the mission in Tokyo to go and remove that rocket body, be another world first. In the UK, we're building ELSA-M with partners, including Eutelsat OneWeb, ESA, and the UK Space Agency. It's been a great partnership, and we're fully integrated now, the spacecraft. We're looking to launch at the end of next year, and that will remove a OneWeb spacecraft to prove the sustainability aspects that some of the LEO operators need. So that's RPO. We need to get there on that one. The next one I'd mention is robotics, how to integrate complex robotics, obviously space qualified, into this platform that is very agile and highly maneuverable. And we're seeing more and more of that. We're working with a number of partners. We're also building some of that robotics internally in Astroscale. So that is a really important part of the system, depending on the service that we're getting there. So we're on the right track. And then finally, I'd think about the actual user or customer side. We call it client side on it, in a client satellite. And that's the preparation side. How can satellites be prepared for servicing, become more modular as we go forward? And we're seeing more and more of that. We actually make our own magnetic capture system to enable end-of-life servicing. And that's on well over 500 satellites now, and more coming. We signed a contract with Airbus Constellation Satellites last year, which is for another 100 satellites for a constellation operator. And there's more coming, more repeat orders for that. So we're seeing more and more servicing preparedness, if you can say it that way. So I think we're in the foothills in terms of a mountain analogy. We get into we see that nirvana at the top, and we're on that journey.
So you said circular space economy by 2035, and that's something that you predict or that you're working towards, or both?
We're working towards that. That's our corporate objective. What we really want to do is make in-orbit servicing routine by 2030. That's the first step. And then the wider step is the circular economy, and that's the refurbishment, replenishment, and making much more supporting that sort of technology in space.
Thank you. Staying with industry, I'm going to go to Cedric next. From Thales Alenia's perspective, again, what policies, what partnerships, what research and investments support this development of space sustainability technologies?
Thank you, Chris. On Thales Alenia Space, first I would like to remind that what we're tackling here is quite serious. I mean, we're speaking about the future of our planet and the business field of our company. So in Thales Alenia Space, 3 years ago, we initiated, I'm part of strategy department, we initiated a strategic move, working on sustainability as a whole. So we have developed 3 strategic pillars. One is engaging and embedding, engaging not only internally but also externally with all the stakeholders. So it's a really open approach of sustainability that we are driving. The second pillar is about sustainability, but going up to circularity. So quite aligned with your objective. Actually, we would like it to happen in 2034, I think, if I remember well. And then the third one is about acting on global challenges. In this sense, as we are a big prime, and I remember there were some comments at the beginning of the event yesterday, we have learned how to work with many companies, so in an open way. And we have developed a lot of, actually, I like the presentation of Candice. I think it quite wraps up what makes a circular economy or a full picture of sustainability. And so we are more or less in all of these, let's say, technological bricks. I will not mention all of them, but in-orbit servicing, in-orbit assembly manufacturing, collision avoidance, space traffic, weather, SSA, STM, STC, etc. So as a big prime, we're involved in I think, almost all of them. We do this with the support of our national agencies and institutional players in Europe, and there are many action-driven. So we have been developing technology through European Commission with Eros, for instance. The EU Space Law and PFCR are really building the way towards a sustainable space. At ESA level, there are many technical actions ongoing to which we participate, programs. In France, we have been working on the feuille de route de décarbonation, so the roadmap of French decarbonation sector. We are starting a program of demonstration in orbit, so kind of test and learn approach. So quite a wide approach of technological development with the support of our agencies and public actors. So we're on the way. The journey is going to be very long. We need to be very ambitious because what is at stake is our future. So that would be my answer to your question.
Thank you. I want to now give the floor to Professor Monnoyer-Smith. Professor, you've heard already mentioned this strategy, but please introduce in full the French decarbonization strategy and how it relates to the space and the satellite industry. What does this strategy hope to accomplish, and how does it hope to accomplish that?
Well, there are two strategies. The first one, which is the big one, which has been developed by the French government, this decarbonization strategy for the whole country, all right? So this one is linked to the national engagement that we have towards the EU, for example, and worldwide, just for the COP30 or COP engagement that we have. The second one is a sectorial one dedicated to the space industry. And actually, it happened in this very ministry. 2 years ago, the Ministry of Economy has asked CNES to develop a specific strategy for the space sector in terms of the reduction of the environmental footprint of the whole space sector, the French space sector. And we decided to start with decarbonization because it's actually easier. But behind that, and we have many years of work in front of us to think, to realize, and to develop new initiatives in order to reduce the environmental footprint, which is not only linked with carbon, but also with pollution, with ozone, etc., and so on and so forth. And I might talk about that a bit later. So this decarbonization roadmap strategy is dedicated to the space sector. So in France, we have this law that has been adopted 2 years ago that asks for many industrial sectors to elaborate a specific strategy on carbon, but the space sector is not a huge one and it's not compulsory for the space sector to do it. So that's why the ministry asked CNES to work on this on a voluntary basis, and we've been doing this work with many companies within the ecosystems, and we've been working for a year, more than a year, and it's actually unique in the world what we've been achieving through this cooperation, because we've put together all the main French companies, being from upstream to downstream, big companies and small companies. We had the Alliance New Space with us, but also all the prime with us, Eutelsat, and so on and so forth. We gathered them together. We asked them to share their industrial data in order to be able to evaluate the carbon footprint of the French industry, which is not an easy task, because we realized that we were lacking some data, especially data linked to the impact we have on the high atmosphere, because the space industry is the only one who has an impact on the high layer of the atmosphere. So we lack some data, but that will foster some research that we are actually doing at an international level. So we've been evaluating this footprint. Of course, we will have to keep working on it in the next years, and we have been we have been doing a perspective of how it should evolve in 2030, 40, and 50, accordingly to the engagement France has toward the EU. And the bad news is it's actually going to be extremely hard for the industry to achieve the engagement in a very in the horizon 2050. It's going to be very hard because nobody actually has the technology that allow us to meet the engagement we have, even if the engagement towards Europe, meaning zero emission, net zero emission by 2050. The good news is we do have initiatives and we do have innovations, not only technological innovation. We need to go a lot further than technology to be able to reach the goals. To meet the objective in 2040, pretty much, if we actually put all our efforts together, which means paradigm change in business models, pretty much. Which means also prioritizing what type of mission we'll be able to develop. And so together, all the companies together, we envision, we've been working on the different levers we can envision. We've found 5 different types of levers in order to reach the goals. And they're dealing with energy consumption, with data, with optimization of also infrastructures, which is extremely interesting. How can we not, develop many infrastructures to accompany the evolution or the growth of the sector? How we can mutualize, optimize, and so on and so forth our efforts to meet this goal. So many different levels they have been described into this strategy shared at the Salon du Bourget in June. And so season 2 is now starting, now that we have our strategy, how we meet the goal and how we help each other, how we, as the French Space Agency, how we give the means, how we work with the companies in order to help them to innovate, to be resilient, and to be able to imagine new processes. So it's not only about technologies. This is something we really have to think about, because technology, of course, helps, but it's not the whole story. It's also about process. It's also about thinking what we have to do in the geopolitical context we are in and what we should abandon.
Yeah, I heard you use that phrase, paradigm-changing business models.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, thank you for that. I'm now going to return to, let's go back to Japan. Masa, how does the Space Strategy Fund determine which technologies or which service areas to focus on? Is it investing in specific business models or looking to support and catalyze, let's say, broader technological capabilities?
Thank you for the great question. As I mentioned, we are currently supporting 46 technology development themes, including some specific technologies related to space sustainability. So Japan has one policy document called Space Technology Strategy that provide a strategic guideline for the Space Strategy Fund. So this policy document defines technological areas for Japan to take advantage. So based on 3 main factors. First, use case in national security and commercial application. Second, competitive advantage. And the third one is national technological autonomy. So this space technology strategy will provide a strategic guideline to the Space Strategy Fund to invest. So based on this policy document, we are currently supporting 46 technology development topics across 4 areas, including satellite, launch, exploration, and also common technologies. So in addition, we also have KPIs for each space industry vertical. So for example, one specific KPI for the launch segment is Japan aims to have a national launch capacity of 30 rockets from Japanese soil per year by early 2030s. So in addition, in the satellite segment, at least 5 satellite constellations will be deployed by our domestic industry player by early 2030s. So this is our KPIs for our Space Strategy Fund. So as for the technologies related to space sustainability, we are approaching from 2 different perspectives. So first, under the Space Strategy Fund, supported companies are required to consider measures for space debris mitigation and also safe and peaceful use of outer space. So because we build space sustainability as a broad concept, spanning across all space industry vertical. So that's why we require the private company to consider the space sustainability under the Space Strategy Fund. That's one approach. The other approach, we are supporting a specific technological capability related to space sustainability. So for instance, we are supporting our OTV, orbit transfer vehicle, and also in-orbit manufacturing capability that can be applied for various in-orbit servicing in the near future. So because we see these technology as a key areas from both national security perspective and also a space sustainability perspective. So especially for space debris removal, we have a specialist here in Japan. So the Japanese government already are operating existing program called our CRD2 program for space debris removal demonstration. So Astroscale is involved in that program. So the Space Strategy Fund focuses more on fundamental technologies so that can be applied for various in-orbit servicing. Yeah, that's the approach we are taking.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to now turn to Fani. Fani, looking forward and remind, you've just heard phrases like, paradigm-changing business models, circular space economy by 2035. I want to get, what was it, 2035? 2035. Your reaction to that. Looking forward, what strategies can institutional financing sources employ to help ensure that these needed technologies move past the beginning stages of development and, in fact, survive long enough to make it to market and to thrive? So do you see this happening? And if not, why not?
I need a crystal ball.
What's that?
I need a crystal ball for that. I'm going to use Nick's analogy. Instead of going into the future, let me go a bit backwards. I'll go into the past 1 second. Because if we see what happened in the last 2 decades on the economic landscape, things have changed drastically, right? And that includes investments for the space sector. So it's all part of the same ecosystem. And I liked what the professor also brought up, is it's about the market. I mean, right now the market, the economic uncertainty is not helping. The geopolitical tension, may I say, is not obviously in our favor to boost and thrive. Maybe it will, but not now. And energy prices, everything is we have to take everything into account. So if I go backwards before I go forward, I can see the evolution on the space economy and financing is going the right way. I mean, we know a lot of private space companies, private sector companies in the last 2 decades have been, increasingly coming into the new space, I think you call it new space scene. So that's good. It means that things are moving the right direction. If they are starting to have a nice idea, they start trying to get funds. Usually, I think the first point of reference, and we know private financing usually comes either from venture capital or private equity, but in the case where you have a big long-term plan and innovation that requires a lot of fund upfront, you usually need one of these, public sector financiers or international financial institutions like ourselves. Maybe we can find, projects together where you can have that security, that backup that allows you to figure things out, allows you to develop these technologies that are really costly, that need that long-term view. Because it's true, I mean, when you look at the venture capital and private equity world, these sources of funding are not, well, they're currently, I would say, I want to be careful with my words, but they're in a challenging, let's say, juncture right now. And I think we need indeed to find innovative ways of funding for the space industry. And potentially looking at multilateral development banks that have mission-driven organizations. For example, we have green transition as one of our key objectives. In all the sectors we invest, across all the board we do, we are basically since a couple of years ago already fully Paris aligned, like the Paris Agreement aligned. We basically have green transition as one of our first objectives as a bank. Second is human capital, and then we have economic governance. Okay, there's no 1, 2, 3, but last year alone, EBRD actually invested 9.7 billion euros only on green projects across the 40 countries I mentioned earlier. So it's not small. It was 58% of our total business annual volume of investment. 58% was for green projects. So again, I go back to Candy's presentation earlier because she talked about space economy, and I think at one of, in one of her slides, she said there's a growing request or a growing interest in green investments. Great, because this is our bread and butter. So I would say, look at non-traditional stakeholders for this funding. Look at people you're not usually talking about space financing. Maybe they have funds or they can support you in your journey, wherever that is, in the beginning, early stage, middle, later to scale, to market. Because institutions like ours could potentially be a solution that are not linked to space ecosystem yet, because you don't speak to each other. But let's speak to each other. I mean, again, I think we have to think outside of the box. And I know it's sometimes good, and trust is something that I think needs to be established before you make deals. And I understand the space industry is a long, it has built trust with certain partners. But I think it's time to go into the next level, which is to see where the opportunities are, even if they're not space usual stakeholders. So I think, my perception is that I don't know about, 2030 or 2034 or 5. I can't, they're clearly competing here on circular economy. I'm not going to be in the race. But I think that's great. I like the ambition. I like it's not doom and gloom when I'm around space people. That's why I, pushed my way through to actually make this position happen only 2 months ago. But I do see that there are issues that we need to overcome as a sector. Regulatory is an issue as well, as you said, Professor. There are things, you want things to progress, but you don't want, to be stopped when you have that ambition, that vision, that dream, because the rule says so. You need to abide to the rules, but you need someone to back your idea. You need someone to share your vision and hopefully put their money in that ambition. And again, public sector funding and potentially financial institutions with long-term, mission-driven, objectives could be the answer to diversify the sources, the funding sources.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Nick, I want to go back to Astroscale. I want to get into specifics. What type of government programs and policies do you think are just necessary to sustain ISAM and Astroscale activities through transition to viable commercial services, flourishing commercial services, and what types of government actors should be involved in that process?
Thanks, Chris. It's a great question. I think I'll just start by saying what we're trying to achieve is really hard. I mentioned it earlier, that rendezvous proximity operations, the capture, the removal, the refueling. None of this has ever really been done. Okay, we've docked in orbit before, but that's controlled, both sides. Some of the things we're trying to do, it's uncontrolled, it's uncoordinated, it's an order of magnitude harder, particularly active debris removal. So, I'm always amazed when I go around the office. We have 220 people in Harwell, near Oxford in the UK. And some of the technological aspects that are being achieved is incredible. And they're so passionate, the staff. As well, they really want to achieve this sustainable end goal and the circular economy, and it just really inspires me, and I'm so proud to actually lead that sort of team. But what they really want to achieve is the end goal and how we can get to that point that I mentioned earlier by 2035. But in terms of government programs, because it is so hard, we need two types of intervention, I would argue. And the first one is really institutional programs. I think Joseph Ashbacker mentioned yesterday on his address, and also Holger this morning. There's a big council of ministers coming up within ESA, less than a month away now. And we are seeing more prioritization for ISAM or in-orbit servicing programs, which is great. So I think that's really important for many companies, including for Astroscale. We need more of that to get up to TRL 9 in some of these technologies. I think the other one that's been mentioned a little bit here is defense capability development. And I know that's a difficult issue sometimes to address and put it in the sustainable domain, but that is a way of getting us to market over that valley of death faster. We have missions with the Japanese MOD, it's publicly publicized last year, and also with the UK MOD and with the US Space Force. And all of that is, again, pushing our technology further as we approach that end goal. And I think we're seeing all these sorts of interventions in all of our entities around the world. And JAXA has been mentioned, and the Japanese government are investing. I'd like to argue they're pretty much leading a lot of this area at the moment, some of the missions that they're really pushing forward on, and they are taking sustainability really seriously. They are looking to remove some of those dangerous objects in orbit which were put there by Japan, and they're doing their bit. And I think other governments need to step forward as well, so I'd recommend that. So what the end goal is really is that reliable, repeatable, RPO-enabled platforms that we're building, such as ELSA-M in the UK, that can go multi-orbit as well, where we can, to get to that circular economy goal.
Thank you, Nick. Cedric, I'm going to turn to you. And we've talked today on stage and also in the hallway, on stage and off stage, about the state of space sustainability and the technologies and models we need for space sustainability. So I want to return to you and ask you, what's your current assessment of where we're at? Are we on track? And most especially, what gaps do you think you're seeing out there? What gaps do you see in businesses and the state of the economy? And do you have any recommendations for that?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I think there's really a sense of urgency on this topic. So we're not on track, and it will be difficult to catch up. I mean, it's a global issue. But there are many things ongoing. We need to, it's a change of paradigm in terms of business models, and we need to reinvent and to accelerate the developments, to reinvent the models and accelerate the developments. It's not only about technology. That's actually my other role in the company is innovation, and we know how to do this, how to help the emergence of the new businesses, of the changes of paradigm. That's why we created this Space Business Catalyst. It's to drive innovation. And innovation, when you're on the early stages, you need to work it out as an exploration phase. So we have now a kind of ambidextrous organization with internal and external startups. And that's the way you grow new topics, new businesses. So you need this speed and agility. It's fundamental. Then you also need to work as an ecosystem, because what is at stake is just huge. It's not, again, only... and I think the panel is interesting in this sense. You need technology, you need investors, you need policies, and you need to combine all that to make it happen. So we know how to do this. There is also something is that at some point you need to, it's not just a one-shot as we are really tackling something serious. So we need to make it sustainable. So we need to make sustainable space sustainable. So at some point we need to scale up what will be done, either in terms of technological development or new actors, new players. Scaling up is also something we know how to do in a big company. You need to be able to industrialize, and industrializing is not like prototyping. So I think the road is quite, again, quite long, quite ambitious. I think we are key players of this, and we want to remain key players. It has to be tackled as a global issue with the involvement of all the actors who are willing to become the players of this new ecosystem. Again, I will echo to what Candice presented. it's the combination of all these fragmented developments that will make a sustainable economy, a circular economy in space. It's not only managing the traffic, it's also being able to service and to have the business models that allow to re-inject at the upstream what has been done in the downstream. So you need to circularize your economy. So it's a huge challenge. I think it's difficult to be on time, but we need to accelerate, and we're doing many things to try to reach the targets.
Thank you, Cedric. I'm going to now ask a question to Professor Monnoyer-Smith. Before I do, just to remind you, as we look towards the end of the panel, I'll be looking at the Whova app to the questions that are in there, vote on questions if you don't submit one. We'll get to that after this next question. Professor, how is CNES working to foster economic viability and sustainability? Sustainability for space sustainability, technologies and businesses that you've heard so far. How is CNES really working to foster that? I want to hear about what type of collaborations exist, including maybe international collaboration and cooperation, and kind of your reaction. Do you think we're moving in the right direction?
There's no really easy answer to the last part of the question. I'll be more at ease with the first one, which I can say a few words about. What I would like to share with you is that we've been saying that there's many things we don't know what's going to happen, but there's a few things we do know, because science says it for us, is that we already have overshot the 7 planetary boundaries. Last month, Stockholm University Center, Resilience Center, has published that. We know that we are on the track for more than +3 degrees, and it's going to be 4 degrees in Europe, specifically in France, by the end of the century. All that we do know. So we have to act accordingly. And if I think about that, my concern is that we mainly focus on what is the easiest, or what is, because that's something we can actually have a hand on it, because otherwise it's very scary, or it gives us, it's very anxious for everybody. And thinking about how we're going to do circular economy in space, or how we're going to do some space debris removal, is something we can focus our intelligence and our innovation on, but unfortunately it's not enough. It's only, as Candy said, it's just a tiny part of sustainability of the whole industry. We have resource scarcity. We have pollution, specifically, which is very concerning for everyone, pollution on the ozone layer. We have the extension, the production of the whole value chain, which is resource consuming in an amazing way. If we keep on producing tens of thousands of satellites in the next 30 years, there's no way we're going to stay within the planetary boundaries. And this is going to have amazing consequences, and no bankers will be able to finance.
Just to make it clear, I'm not the banker.
No institution or banks will be able to finance a collapsing system. So we have to prevent it. In order to prevent it, we have to think about all the systems, the parts of the systems that Candice explained. So that includes circularity within space, but it also includes life cycle assessment, sobriety in consumption of resources, and wise decision on what and where, considering the geopolitical system we're in, we should put our effort in. Do we need to facilitate transmission of, telecommunication in order to facilitate citizens to watch pornography, or do we want a safe space access? This one is quite easy, actually. But there are more tricky ones. So this is my concern is this, and I'm not sure I mean, that's why I'm saying technology is not the final answer to that. And we need to think about that collectively. We need to think about that with our citizens, because one day when you're dealing with your own life, with catastrophe because your house is, flooded, well, you're going to ask yourself whether you want your government to put money in doing things in space if it's not for you. So I'm really asking the whole industry to think, what do we want to achieve to be able to be resilient and still there to help the planet and our society to keep on living within the climate that we are facing now. So that said, what do we do in CNES? Well, actually, we use our grid and guidelines that we have been working on the decarbonization roadmap and say, how do the companies actually help us to achieve these goals? And we actually, Cedric has been talking about it, we actually put money into demonstrators in order to reach that, or other primary goals such as sovereignty or defense. And we work quite closely with them, and I take some really quality time with these companies to say, how actually do you frame your business models in order to be resilient? Because we want you to be still there in 20 years, or even 2 years, actually. But we want you to be able to deliver this in a few years, but that means choices to be made.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Now I'm looking at the top voted question. This is a good question, and we're going to have it for everyone because it should spark some kind of discussion. So first, we often hear about new funding initiatives for space and sustainability, yet many innovators still say there's not enough funding. Do you agree with that? If so, next, how do you explain this gap between the amount of funding announced and the amount that actually reaches sustainable space businesses? So any reactions to that? Is there a gap, and how do you respond to that?
I could have a first go if you don't mind, panelists.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think, thinking about it from a UK and European perspective, I think we are seeing more funding coming. I think we've seen a lot of funding in supporting that early stage, TRL 1 to 3-ish, maybe. What we need now is very like what we're discussing here on this panel in terms of the Valley of Death technologically. We need to see how we get across 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 9 and get to that end goal. And I think that's a different type of funding that we need. That's demonstration programs that's been mentioned. I think it's programs, partnerships sometimes, like I mentioned our Aerospace program. UK Space Agency has been a brilliant partner to co-fund that with us to a fairly large amount, less than 50%, but still significant. That's really helped us match with our own funding. So that's the sort of thing I'd like to see more of, but then more real demonstration to show these services in action so that then we can take it to that another nirvana that I like to think about, which is that commercial nirvana going forward, where we're going to see that circular economy.
Definitely there's not enough funding on this topic. I mean, it's a question of priority. I think it has been well said. And it is a priority, so it's easy to say, but there should be much more funding on that if everybody had the same perception of the urgency. Now maybe it's also a question of vision, of the capability to understand where we're heading to. Again, we are pushing many fragmented things, and I think what we would need is a common vision at ecosystem level to really drive the journey towards something that we would like to reach. And this maybe would help to increase the amount of financial support that we have to develop the various technologies, demonstrators, and then projects and products to have a circular economy in space.
May I? So in Japan, as I mentioned, our government is investing so much money into the space industry. So especially for space sustainability, we are operating so many programs. However, I feel the government programs tend to focus more on technological or service level requirement rather than cost and usability for commercial applications. So especially for space sustainability related technology, our implementation cost is often higher than economic benefit for end user. They bring in a very early stage. So the cost comes faster, however, our benefit comes later. So I would expect the government and industry collaborate together to bridge this difference in timeline to foster public acceptance among diverse stakeholders. So before I joined the space industry, I worked as a management consultant for automobile industry. So the sustainability has been a long-standing challenge for the automobile industries. So Japan is home to many hybrid vehicles, including the Toyota Prius. So when a hybrid vehicle firstly introduced in Japan, the cost of a hybrid vehicle was much higher than a traditional petrol engine car. So the government provided the subsidies to close the price gap between the hybrid vehicle and the traditional conventional cars. And also, automobile OEMs also proposed a new concept of total lifetime cost, including the initial cost and also operational maintenance cost to promote the benefit of a hybrid car compared to the traditional cars. So, and later, the driving hybrid car became recognized as a symbol for social leader to demonstrate their environmental awareness. So these activities could contribute to accelerating the adoption of new hybrid technologies. So of course, the space industry is totally different from the automobile industry. However, we need to learn more from other industry, and we need to consider the public acceptance strategy of space sustainability.
All right, thank you for that. Listen, there was a lot of very interesting questions on HUVA, including one on dual use that if I had time, I would have asked it. But feel free, audience, to politely, diplomatically waylay our panelists when you see them exit the stage and when you see them in the hallway. If you really like to follow up and leverage the expertise and the excellent insights and knowledge from this panel. I want to conclude the panel by asking each of our panelists to just share one final thought. What is one final thought or notion that you'd like to communicate to the audience, this audience here, and maybe that you think we should be socialized more broadly on how to get from this initial minimum viability for space sustainability technologies all the way to an actually commercially sustainable space industry and a space sustainability industry?
Yeah, shall I start? I just want to say that Professor really put us back in our place just earlier, because we missed the big picture, and that's, I think, very relevant in this last sentence, I would say. We don't need, we all have a vision, but ultimately it's about the collective vision. What are we doing and how space can help us here on Earth and society across the globe, right? From there, I don't think you see, borders. You don't see that's my country, that's your country. I think that shared mission about protecting our planet, and when you say sustainability, I hear sustainability for Earth, but I know some people think about sustainability in my, revenue, sustainability in getting more stuff, bought by customers, which is great. But for me, I think the big picture is, we've got this planet. I've got kids back home, so I want them to have something good, after I'm gone. So I think we have to step back, and if we can use space for all these amazing things, as you said, motorcycle, automotive, everything that Earth needs can be, a solution can be found through space. Great. Let's put our efforts there. Hopefully financing will come because the vision will be shared. So I think we should start looking at how space sustainability can impact us as a collective group, not fragmented.
Thank you, Fani. Other folks with final notions and thoughts?
Yeah, maybe just to bounce back on this one. In Thales, we have a motto. I don't often use them, but I think it really applies here. It's think big, make it happen together. And I really think it applies to this. I agree. We need to also to step back and to really take this challenge all together. And yeah, at least in Thales Alenia Space, we really are eager to face this challenge and to try to bring our part of the effort to reach this objective. So,
I think one point I'd like to leave the audience with, if I may, is you know, we've talked about the Valley of Death. I talked about mountains as well, where we can see the top of that mountain, and we've got some of the equipment. We need to finish the rest of it to get up that mountain, and that's what we need support for in the industry. So government, institutional, space agency, if you want to call it that, programs are really important for that, to get us over that Valley of Death. You know, JAXA, UKSA, CNES here in France, that's the sort of support that the industry needs now as we continue to build out our supply chain and build the capabilities that we need. And we need it. We need that at pace as well now to reach the end goals. And I would recommend that those programs, in terms of structure, let's keep them outcome-based, not massive loads of requirements, please.
Thank you. Others, the last two.
Arigo, and you can close the session, right? Yeah, actually, space is a frontier for all humanity. However, when exploring frontier, humanity always run into problem. So think of Age of Discovery or Gold Rush or Antarctica. There are always dispute and environmental constructions. So I believe the space industry is facing a variety of challenges. The space sustainability is one of the top priority for all humanity. However, the space industry, more than just traditional space nations, our country and company around the world are fostering and joining the new space movement entirely with different goals from country to country. So I believe this variety of stakeholders should have to act harmoniously each other to achieve the progress for the industry as a whole.
Thank you. Professor, with the final word?
Yeah, I think I would just say that every industry, and especially the space industry, has a very high concentration of scientists, engineers, and in the space industry, it is very amazing. And how can we put all this intellect, energy, knowledge into contributing to help this planet to properly live?
All right. Thank you. I'd like to thank our panelists. Audience, please give them a round of applause.